and welcome to the aftermath of Storm Eunice. Well, I have to admit, it is actually Sunday morning and the wind has abated a little bit. You can still hear the wind, or I can still hear the wind going around, but it's not as bad as it has been for the last 2 days. For those that don't know, in the UK we've just had, well, we had at the beginning of last week, we had Storm Doug, and then, no, it wasn't Storm Doug, yeah, it was Doug, yeah, and now we've just had Storm Eunice, and Eunice has been quite a big one, sort of very windy here on the south coast, sort of 90 to 100 mile an hour winds, and personally the only thing that's really affected us, I mean apart from whippling around the house, because we are down on the coast, is the fact that I was looking out the window on the Friday to see the cover that we've put over the furniture to protect it from sort of the winter weather. Had basically, the wind had got underneath it, was lifting the furniture up and it was disappearing off over the fence. So we've now moved the furniture to just outside this window. So it's a little bit less gusty there, although it has been really gusty, and we've got 2 big lumps of concrete holding it all down that we sort of got from another part of the garden. But less on the storm and more on more important matters is that Lewis Hamilton has actually turned up at the Mercedes workshops in where is it there? Northampton way, I can't think where it is now, Brackley, and for his seat fitting. So that's good news, because he's actually going to race next year, whereas loads of people thought he wasn't. I never thought he wasn't for one instance. As you can see, I'm proudly supporting my Team Mercedes polo shirt. But I am pleased to see that the FIA has stepped in, and unfortunately I think it looks like Michael Massey has lost his job. But they have stepped in with a whole bunch of proposed rule changes for this season, so hopefully we won't end up with the same fiasco we had in Abu Dhabi. But now back to more music related things. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. So, those that have been watching me on Instagram or follow me on Instagram will know that I sent the end pieces for my T1 off to get new pieces made. Now these were the original end pieces, okay, and I have actually done part of a video of taking these off the T1. Waiting for them to come back so I can put them back on the T1. But they're the end pieces. You can see they're sort of, you know, I mean, it's not surprising. I mean, let's face it, the T1 is 30 plus years old. You know, it's got a bit of damage, and I sort of looked at these and thought, do I refurb the existing ones? And really all the existing ones are is this sort of kind of particle board covered in a laminate. So they're not expensive, as they say, but I've always wanted to put something a little bit better back. And I had real problems getting or finding somebody who was competent enough to make new ones of these. And I think it's purely because of the number of angles on these things. I mean, they're sloping there and they're straight there, and then you've got these bits cut away here, which is where the baseboard fits into there, because obviously it slides onto the baseboard like so. But as you can see, you know, it was a case of, do I, you know, properly refurbish these, which I could have done, taken the laminate off this and then refurbished it. But I thought to myself, rather than put back these, what I'd do is get some new ones made. And I haven't taken these out of their cellophane wrapping yet, but these have been made, and as you can see, they've got the angles on them. They've been cut out at the bottom to take the board. What they haven't been is drilled yet, so I've got to drill those out. I'm not sure whether this will come across on camera, but if you look at this, you can see the drill holes here where the metal frame goes onto this, which is how it attaches to the T1. So they haven't been drilled. I've got to drill them, and the reason why I haven't done so far is A, it's been blowing a hoolie here, and I wasn't going to come out and work in the garage when it was blowing a hoolie. And the second thing is I need, I've ordered a bit, should I say, which is a very accurate ruler. And why have I gone for a very accurate ruler? It's just so that I can put a ruler on the edge here and then scroll lines up, so I can actually put the holes in exactly the same positions the holes were on those. I could do it with a set square and a ruler, I guess, but I just don't want to muck them up now that I've had them made. So thank you very much to Steph at Bit Crusher, who got these made up for me. As I say, I'll go through the video. I put links to the site where I got these made up. She makes side panels for a number of different instruments, so I'm not taking these out of the cellophane wrapper at the moment because I don't want to damage them. But there you are, there's the other one. As I say, it all looks very, very nice, proper wood, like so. So with a little bit of luck, that will go back together nicely, and it will really improve the look of the T1. But we shall see. So watch out for the video on that. I'm going to try and do the video next weekend. I'm going to try and put those on next weekend. I've got to go and get the T1 back out of storage, because it obviously, once I took these off, it went off to storage over Christmas, because I actually took these off and sent these to Steph before Christmas. It's taken kind of that long for these to sort of go through the mill, if you like, of everything that has had to be done. As I say, it's not, for a carpenter who has all the tools, it's probably a fairly straightforward job. But for somebody who doesn't have all the tools, this is actually a fairly lengthy job, because of the geometry of these. They're not square and they're not flat. You know, you've got rounded pieces here, you've got an angle going down there which matches the slope of the keyboard, you've got bits that are cut out. If I had all the tools, I'm sure I could probably do this, but I don't have all the tools, I don't have access to all the tools, so I have to go and get somebody who does. Anyway, that be the T1 end panels. Now, many moons ago, many moons ago, I acquired a book called 100 Patches for the DX7. And I think it was book 2. No, it was book 1. It was book 1. It was this one. Okay, and this has, as it rightly says, 100 patches for the DX7. It also has at the back of it, which I've never really used, but it also has a blank template, which you can photocopy and create your own patch records for the DX7. Anyway, these are all various different patches, and if you go up the front, you've got what these patches are. So Vibra Rhodes is one of them. There's 5 string patches in here. There's 5 organ patches. There's an old Rhodes, but that I got that, and you know, I've used it a few times for doing patches. Now, what's really interesting about that is that I've never really used this with the DT7, which is kind of something I want to do. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I've now acquired the other 3 books in the series. Here's book 2, book 3 and book 4. And if you read the back of that, if I do that to camera, which you probably can't read because it won't focus, but it says there are actually 6 books in the series. 4 of them are DX7 and 2 of them are CZ100, which is a CZ101, sorry, which is the Casio synthesizer that was around about the same time. So the game plan really is that I'm going to take some of these, I'm going to flip through the patches, and then what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to do a video where I actually set some of these up, and then we see what they sound like on the DX7. So I've got a couple of ideas of how I'm going to do this. So one will be to use the DT7, because that's what the DT7 was ultimately bought for, so I could program the DX7 much quicker. So that's one thing, one way of doing it. The other way of doing it I thought about, which might be interesting, is to use the DX7 programmer that comes on the CX5M. So I've now got the new and improved Mark II programmer for the CX5M. So we might give that a go as well, and just see, you know, how you can program up the DX7 using both those mechanisms. Yes, I know there are other mechanisms, but they're the two mechanisms I have, so they're the two mechanisms you guys are going to see. So anyway, they have turned up. I'm quite pleased that they have turned up. They're in extremely good condition. I mean, I'd actually go so far as to say that I don't think these have actually ever been used, because there's actually no marks on the pages whatsoever. So let's get some of those out and see what they look like. Or rather, more importantly, let's see what they sound like. Now, something I've been contemplating for a while, and this actually turned up a few weeks ago. And if you, again, follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you probably would have seen a picture of this little thing turn up. What is this little thing? Well, that is a ROM chip. And that is a ROM chip for the TX802. And there is a little bit of a story behind this. So this is sold by a guy in France. Whether these are his samples or not, I don't know. Or whether these are his patches or not, I don't know, if I'm brutally honest. But a friend of mine was playing his TX802 before Christmas, way before Christmas this was, when we were temporarily allowed to move around again. And I was like, well, you know, he had no ROM cartridges loaded into the 802, so I was like, well, you know, have you programmed these up? And he said, no, I bought this chip. So I said, well, what chip was that then? And he said, oh, you know, there's a guy on the internet selling this chip. So I thought, well, shall I buy it or shall I not buy it? And I've been umming and ahhing about it, and umming and ahhing about it. And then all of a sudden it popped up into, I don't know whether did it pop up into a, yeah, I think it popped up into an eBay search that I have that runs. And this chip, so it obviously relisted this chip. And I said, took a picture of it and sent it across to my mate and said, look, yeah, is that the chip you've got? And he said, yeah, it looks like it. So I thought I'd buy it and experiment with it. It wasn't expensive. It was only, you know, I think it was about £20 plus shipping. Anyway, basically what it gives you is it gives you 2 banks of sound for the TX802. And that is the bank list for it. Bank A consists of 32 Rhodes sounds and 32 CLAVI sounds, and bank B gives you 32 EP sounds and 32 organs. Now, as I've said, I've heard some of these, so I know what some of these are like, and I quite like them. They've got that sort of DX7 FM modulation sound to them. I've always loved that sort of piano that's on the DX7. It's always been one of my favourite tones, and this has some variations of that same piano, slightly different tonal depths to it. So what I thought I'd do with this is I'd buy it and I'd stick it in the 802, and then we can see what sort of noise it makes, or what sort of sounds it makes. Whether it was a good investment or a bad investment, and do I need to buy another 802 so that I can run a stock 802 and a altered 802. But that is the keys chip for the 802. So there's another. I've got so many videos that I want to make. I'm kind of hampered by 2 things. I'm hampered by the fact that I have to go to work during the week, because if I don't go to work, I don't earn the pennies, and as you work guys well know, I am thoroughly skint at the moment. So that is kind of a bit of a problem. And by this time in life I should have been semi-retired, says I. That was always my plan, actually, to be retired at 50, so I've managed to completely miss that one. But plans are afoot, so let's see what happens. And the last thing on this week's rant is an update on this thing. So last week I said that I had parts on order for the next phase of Revenge of the Clone, and unfortunately not all the parts have arrived. A bunch of parts have arrived, and they be the parts that have arrived. And I will go into more detail on what exactly these things are for, but there's a bunch of other stuff that hasn't turned up yet, which is it's kind of slightly annoying, if I'm brutally honest, because I really wanted to, or today anyway, get into this and do the next piece of research for the next video on Revenge of the Clone, and I haven't been able to. So I guess we'll have to carry on waiting. The key bit I'm waiting for, actually, to be honest, is I'm waiting for a second-hand, I think it's a terabyte SATA drive. So the idea is that I will take that, I'll format that, do a military format on it, and then basically we'll be able to then test whether I can get this machine to read a basic SATA drive. And if I can I clone the original SATA drive to the enlarged SATA drive that I'm buying? And if I can do that, I can kind of move the project forward a bit. So that's kind of what I'm waiting for. But these things that I've bought are actually for a slightly different experiment. I really still want to get an SSD in this thing. That's the goal, is to get an SSD in. And the way that is to do an experiment to see if I can get an SSD in a slightly different way. So rather than connecting because the problem with SSDs is most SSDs you buy are SATA interface, and obviously this is not a SATA interface, it's a parallel ATA interface, or an IDE drive as they call it, used to call it, and because of that, that may be causing the problem of getting SSD in there. But if I can bypass the connection to the board, maybe I can get an SSD in via another way. That's kind of the logic here, and that's kind of where we're going to go. So watch this space. Revenge of the Clone Part 3 is coming when the part arrives. So until then, live long and prosper, and I'll see you next time, hopefully with a more instructional video. Bye bye.